countrywide on RTE Radio 1. Sponsored by Calder Gas, celebrating 80 years, bringing energy to Ireland's homes and businesses.
And a really hot issue for many people in farming and indeed elsewhere is the issue of the safety of glyphosate, the weed killer produced by Agri firm Monsanto and the most widely used herbicide in the world. It was discussed at a meeting of the EU Agri and Environmental Committee in Brussels this week, which was attended by MEP Mairead McGuinness.
On October the 25th, the Member States will have to make a decision and either vote to renew the licence of glyphosate that people might know as Roundup, or not to renew the licence. Nobody's quite clear what way this is going to go. There has to be a qualified majority, and if it gets the qualified majority, the product remains on the market. If it doesn't, then the product is banned. So people will know very soon what's happening. We had a hearing in the Parliament this week between the Agri and the Environment Committees around the science of glyphosate.
Well, so it's going to be up to the EU member states to vote and decide whether to extend the licence for this Roundup, glyphosate. And there are concerns, and the reason why it's such a hot topic, there are concerns and there's suggestions that it's a carcinogenic and it should not be actually used. But then there are other people saying that there's science to show that it's not a health risk. So it depends, I suppose, who you believe or from where you're coming at it. Well, I have two people here in front of me with differing views. Louis McAuley is an arable farmer from County Meath who does not support the ban. And Rod Calder-Potts runs one of Ireland's best known and multi-award winning artisan food brands, Highbank Orchards in Cuffsgrange in County Kilkenny. You're both very welcome. Louis, to you first. Tell me what sort of farming you do and why you need glyphosate.
Well, we've recently, we'll say in the last 5 years, have moved away kind of from ploughing and intensive cultivation, and we're pursuing a more conservation agriculture model. And one of the key tools for that is glyphosate. Instead of ploughing and cultivating the soil, we're growing these green cover crops. We're creating an environment and an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And without destroying it up by cultivation, we're putting on glyphosate before we sow our next crop. It's allowing us to improve the microclimate within the crop, the environment in the greater area of the field. It's improving our soil biology. So glyphosate, while probably not perfect, like no other chemical, like the world is full of chemicals, but the good it's doing on farms like us would far outweigh the negatives.
So it's used to kill weeds.
Yeah.
Whether it's in your garden or whether it's in a field of wheat, and it's to kill the weeds, isn't that right? And
that's right.
It's the follicles that you can't. They have to actually grow first before they can be killed. Is basically it. So that's why it's needed. Yeah. If those weeds grew up through the grain and up through the corn, would it be useless?
It will compete with the crop. The crop wouldn't be viable.
Right.
And what we're actually doing by this model of farming, we're reducing the other chemicals we're using along the system.
Okay.
It's not GM. It's nothing fancy like that.
What you're saying is the sort of farming you're involved in, you're very careful about the environment.
Absolutely,
and very responsible in terms of...
We're at a situation where we're farming without insecticides. We're not using any fungicide seed dressings.
Which are happy to use the herbicide.
Absolutely, what we're seeing on the soil is the longer the fields are in that system, the better they are, the more life there is in them.
Right, of course, it first came on the market, I think, 40 years ago, so it's been used that long. And now, Rod, why is this proposed ban in front of the EU?
Well, the glyphosate is a health issue. It's an agricultural issue as well because it's a health issue. Mm-hmm. And to really understand why it's a health issue, you have to understand how it works. Okay, I was actually there when glyphosate arrived on the scene, and we were absolutely delighted with it because it's so effective that all you have to do is touch the leaf of a plant with a little bit of glyphosate, and the plant dies completely, thoroughly down to the roots. Now, the way it works is that glyphosate, it was originally invented and discovered and used as a chelator for chelating chemicals and cleaning pipes, as a matter of interest. And then they discovered that it was a very effective herbicide. Now, the way it works is that it interferes with the Shim-attack pathway, which is the pathway that a plant uses to synthesize amino acids. Now, amino acids are the building blocks of protein. These are absolutely essential to the human body. And so, but the human body doesn't have this Shimatak pathway. The human body doesn't have a way of synthesizing amino acids. So it acquires the amino acids either through food.
Okay, but at what stage was it proved, or who proved that exposure to glyphosate caused cancer in humans?
Well, the WHO have come out with this. They say that it's probably a carcinogenic. And in the speak of the WHO, the World Health Organization, I would take that to mean that it is completely...
But isn't there another wing of the World Health Organization saying it's not?
Let's not get carried away with two different bodies who are arguing. One body is Monsanto, and the other body is the World Health Organization, if you like. It's beyond... It is a very disputed thing, and it's beyond doubt. Now, there's a precautionary principle within the EU.
Well, then why is the European Food Safety Authority and the European Chemical Agency and the UN's FAO all saying there's nothing to worry about?
That's a very, very good question. And one wonders why their inquiries are not transparent and why we cannot look at...
So who do our parliamentarians listen to when they're trying to make a scientific decision?
You see, this is it. The lobby in Brussels that is by the pharmaceutical companies like Monsanto is enormously powerful, and
although they weren't allowed into the Parliament this week now.
That was only this week, exactly, because of the way they misbehave.
Yeah. Okay. No. I'll come back to you, Rod. You want to come back in there?
Yeah. No. Like, if you look at organic farming, you can look at copper sulfate and all the various other chemicals, non-pesticides, but chemicals nonetheless. And if you follow them through, they'll put the same kind of warnings on fact sheets for them. I actually looked it up last night. Copper sulfate, it carries certain risks too, and yet it's considered an organic.
Well, is there an alternative to glyphosate if it is banned?
Not practical at the minute, but not to do the same thing we're trying to do. Again, I'll go back to my point. It would set back enormously the movement of conservation agriculture. Enormously. It would. There's massive benefits being seen on a small scale so far, but it has potential to reach nearly every farm in the country.
Okay.
Rod, with this principle, where we look after our soil better and we use the available tools we have, such as glyphosate, to reduce our overall chemical use.
Okay, but that's fantastic. But if it's causing cancer,
but it's quite conflicting views. You know what I mean? It's the table salt, sugar, burnt toast. You know, they're all in the same kind of categories. Most of those are, in fact, higher risk than glyphosate.
Okay, because, Rod, you know, was it last year the WHO, that same organisation you quoted earlier on, and they tell us processed meat can cause cancer too?
Let's not digress into that. I mean, it's beyond dispute that glyphosate, the use of glyphosate, the increased use, and it's used in a huge amount nowadays, has been coincidental with the increase in autism, the increase in Alzheimer's, and the increase in ADHD. That is all because the glyphosate now is put onto oilseed rape, it's put onto wheat, it's put onto barley within days of harvest. And if you've been eating non-organic bread this morning, for example, you will have glyphosate in your stomach. Nobody knows very much about what is a safe level, if any, of glyphosate in your stomach. Because the stomach... hold on just for a minute. Your stomach biome, the actual bacteria and so on in your stomach, they have this Shimatak pathway in order to be able to supply us with these essential amino acids. This process is being interrupted by the glyphosate in your stomach.
Okay.
This is very, very frightening.
Okay.
Now, if you were to say, Louis says that he cannot work without glyphosate, this is stuff and nonsense.
Why?
There are thousands of organic growers throughout Ireland and throughout the EU who are not using glyphosate, and perfectly happily. The Rodale Institute in America... Just a minute, let me finish. The Rodale Institute in America are doing what Louis is doing, min-till, no-till farming, without glyphosate.
But there isn't a single organic farmer here that's ploughing.
Well, Louis,
that's not ploughing.
If the choice was your child is going to grow up with autism or you use glyphosate, which way would you go?
You're linking autism and all these other problems with no basis.
No, absolutely.
Correlation does not mean causation. That's
absolutely the basis is there.
We could link to the development of the television with autism because they've followed the same track. There's more autism now. There's more televisions. You simply cannot come on and say that.
Louis, there's a doubt. Okay, and this is what the precautionary principle is about.
You know what I mean? Like, you need to see what we are achieving on these we're thinking along the same lines as you.
Okay, can I just say, but if this ban actually comes into place, if the Parliament, if the member states decide to not extend the licence beyond December, are we just going to import produce from around the world where glyphosate is actually used?
Absolutely.
No, we can grow crops perfectly well without. I grow crops without glyphosate.
You're saying it's going to be a completely organic market?
I think there's another thing
are people going to have to go to the shops and spend purely organic?
Well,
no.
Is it going to result in an increase in food prices?
Quite possibly. Quite possibly. Does that matter? I mean, would you rather eat a poisonous food that's cheap or an expensive food that is not poisonous?
Well, it's
up to
unrealistic to say.
Well, people
we're
have
going to
that
stop
choice at the moment whether they eat organic or non-organic.
No, I actually don't think they do have that choice.
If we're not going to stop importing products from other parts of the world, there's really no
Yeah. But what about the point though that if there is a doubt?
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Why don't we ban salt and sugar and red meat? Is that what you suggest?
I know nothing about
we should ban
salt.
cars.
What we're here to debate is what we're here to debate is glyphosate, and there's very, very good evidence to suggest
it's very conflicting.
That it's a dangerous product
if
to
you
use.
Look it up,
the other thing that we should have, in
conflicting.
fact,
it's not
in order to balance the thing in favour of the level playing field for the Irish farmer, is that there shouldn't be any glyphosate residue tolerated in food. And
there's not. And what I think what I would like to see too is a reform and how it's used. And that pre-harvest that you speak about is completely...
Okay.
That should go.
All right, I'm going to give you 30 seconds each. I mean, if you had the minister's ear going to Brussels, what would you be saying to him before the vote?
I would say that the minister should inform himself. Irish people, the Irish consumer... you were saying earlier, doesn't have a choice. He does have a choice, but the trouble is he expects the minister to protect him and to go to Brussels and to work on his behalf.
Okay.
Now, if the minister goes to Brussels ignorant of the health issues, then he's backing the wrong people and he's not looking after his constituents properly.
Louis?
The minister needs to come and see farms like ours and other farms like it that we're making massive progress. I agree completely about reform and use it. It's overused. It's not used responsibly. But when used responsibly, it can deliver massive, massive gains to the environment, to people, to the soil, to water quality. It's
All right, well, we're not going to get a unanimous agreement on it here. You both have made very, very strong points for and against the continuant licensing of glyphosate. And as we said, we will know in a few weeks' time, I think, when that vote actually takes place, and it will be of huge interest to quite a lot of people. So, Louis McAuley from County Meath, thank you very much. And Rod Calder-Potts from County Kilkenny, thank you very much indeed as well.
Thank you very
and it's
much.
an issue we'll come back to, I'm sure, in the future as well.